Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're a parent to a kid anywhere between 4 and 14, you've probably been there. You're at the playground, and suddenly your child absolutely freezes at the top of a slide, refuses to walk across a simple bridge, or just completely panics in a glass elevator. Today, we're unpacking the actual science behind why this happens and exactly how you can help them through it. Let's jump right in.
It is incredibly tough, right? Watching your child experience sheer terror on a balcony or a staircase, when you know perfectly well they're completely safe. You feel helpless. But understanding the why is your absolute best first step. The truth is, the way their developing brain and body process height is completely different from yours.
Get this, a study of 8 to 10-year-olds found that a whopping 34% experience what's known as visual height intolerance. I mean, that is over a third of all kids in that age bracket. So, if your child feels dizzy, fearful, or unsteady up high, it's actually a highly common developmental stage, not some rare individual weakness. They definitely aren't alone.
So, here is our game plan for today. We're going to start by normalizing this fear and breaking down some of the terminology. Then we'll dive into the wild biology of depth perception, check out some really cool modern VR therapies, and wrap it all up with a totally practical toolkit for you to use on your next playground trip. All right, part 1, normalizing the fear and understanding the spectrum.
It's super important to realize right off the bat that not all fear of heights is a full-blown phobia. Actually, only about 6% of adults have true acrophobia. That's the severe stuff that usually needs clinical treatment. But a massive 28% of adults have what scientists call visual height intolerance. It's subclinical and less severe, but it is a very real, distressing feeling that you're about to lose your balance. Chances are your child is experiencing this much more common height intolerance.
But here's some absolutely fantastic news for you. Unlike adults who develop this later in life, kids have a completely different trajectory. Up to half, literally almost 50% of children who develop visual height intolerance see it just naturally vanish by the time they hit age 10. It very often takes a completely benign course as their sensory and cognitive systems mature.
Moving right along to part 2, how depth perception actually triggers this fear.
So how on earth does this start? Well, researchers historically thought fear of heights was just innate, hardwired from birth. But oh man, wait till you hear this. Researchers actually put babies in little motorized go-karts, and they proved that this fear develops as infants physically learn to move and connect that motion to their visual surroundings. Once those babies had experience steering themselves around, their heart rate spiked when they were dangled over a visual drop-off. Experience literally drives the fear.
This all boils down to something called visual proprioception. Big word, I know. But basically, it's the process where your brain constantly uses the optic flow in your peripheral vision, the stuff in the corners of your eyes, to figure out exactly how you're moving through space. Your brain relies heavily on the visual data of the ground and the walls around you to keep you standing upright.
Now imagine your child is way up high, say on a balcony. Suddenly, those peripheral visual cues are just too far away to read. The brain experiences a sudden loss of that crucial optic flow data. This creates an immediate, terrifying sense of physical instability, which directly triggers a life-saving survival mechanism: height wariness. Your kid's brain is quite literally screaming, "Hey, I don't have enough visual data to keep us balanced."
Which brings us nicely to part 3, the body's physical freeze response, or basically being completely scared stiff.
This loss of balance creates a massive physiological trap. It's a vicious circle. The anxiety of falling makes the child intensely stiffen their anti-gravity muscles to protect themselves. But clenching up like that actually throws off their natural fluid balance reflexes. This rigid posture makes them feel even more unstable, which, you guessed it, loops right back around into causing even more anxiety.
You can actually see this happening in real time. Their body literally goes into an ancient play dead reflex, something we see all across the animal kingdom. Their leg and neck muscles co-contract, locking up tight. Their eyes just glue themselves to the horizon, desperately trying to find a stable visual anchor. And their normal walk, it shifts to a terrified, cautious crawl. So next time it happens, remember, they aren't being stubborn. They are literally scared stiff.
All right, part 4. Let's look at how science is stepping in with virtual reality exposure therapy.
Psychologists are doing some amazing things right now with immersive virtual reality. They use engaging simulations, like the famous Ritchie's plank experience, where users walk a virtual plank right off a skyscraper. This lets kids face terrifying heights in a completely safe, controlled way. Because it's virtual, their logical brain knows they can't fall, which allows their threat system to slowly habituate and realize the height isn't inherently dangerous. It's a game changer for reducing anxiety.
And the data gathered from these VR tests is wild. It shows this fascinating split between our physical and emotional reactions. Get this, the physical response, that intense muscle stiffening, actually maxes out at just 20 meters above the ground. Your body gets as stiff as it's going to get fairly quickly. But the emotional panic, that just keeps climbing. It saturates at 40 meters for non-acrophobic people and climbs all the way up to 70 meters for those with true acrophobia.
So let's bring it all home with Part 5, Practical Tips for Parents, your everyday toolkit.
What does all this actually mean for your next trip to the playground with your 8-year-old? First off, validate their feelings. Try saying, "Hey, I can see being up here makes you uncomfortable. Let's figure this out together." Encourage really small, gradual steps. But whatever you do, please don't force it. Pushing a terrified kid down a tall slide, a tactic sometimes called flooding, can actually traumatize them and make the fear way worse. Never ridicule them, and check yourself to make sure you aren't accidentally projecting your own height anxieties onto them.
If your kid does start panicking up high, give them a really concrete visual task. Remember that visual proprioception stuff? Help their brain out. Tell them to fixate straight on the horizon or focus on a nearby solid object like the wall next to them. This gives them that peripheral data back so they can regain their balance. Oh, and a quick pro tip. Never let a height-anxious kid look through binoculars when they are up high unless they are leaning on something solid. It totally strips away their visual balance cues.
You can also help short-circuit that muscle stiffening loop before they even step foot on the playground. Have them practice belly breathing to calm their nervous system down. For the younger ones, try playing the robot to noodle game. Have them tense up every single muscle like a stiff robot, and then go totally loose and floppy like a wet noodle. Doing this kind of regulation before they climb lowers their baseline arousal and makes the whole experience much easier. Ultimately, taking things slow and steady is the real engine of fear reduction here. Sit down and build a fear ladder together. Maybe step 1 is just standing on the bottom rung of the playground ladder. Step 2 is a smaller slide. Step 3 is the big one. You basically gamify the challenge, turning a terrifying confrontation into a series of achievable little missions that slowly build up their confidence.
We've definitely covered a lot today. Think about it this way. If this fear is actually an ancient, evolutionary superpower designed to keep us safe, your job isn't to just erase it. Honestly, a healthy respect for heights is a good thing. Your real role is to help them understand their amazing bodies and master that response. So how will you help your child master their evolutionary superpower the next time they're facing a high climb? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope you feel totally ready to tackle the playground.